Was there an earthquake during the destruction of Pompeii? Possibly. You may have heard a while back that it was thought that alongside the eruption of Vesuvius, Pompeii had to deal with an earthquake as well, and a paper by a team of experts has argued this and actually presented evidence in the form of the remains of 2 individuals and a collapsed wall. Before I get into the details, it's important to consider what the events were occurring at Pompeii over those 2 days. Broadly speaking, there were 2 main mechanics in action: the fall of material and debris from above, and the pyroclastic flows. When Vesuvius erupted, it sent a column of ash and debris high up into the atmosphere. And what happened here was this first mechanic, and this was largely material falling on Pompeii, and it took the form of pumice and ash, largely pumice and ash. And this might sound not that bad. However, it was very, very bad, because what happened was it started to accumulate on top of roofs and structures, and it caused them to fail. It's been estimated that the rate of fall of the ash and pumice was around 15 centimetres an hour. Now, it's been estimated that between 40 and 60 centimetres on some structures was all that was needed for them to start to collapse. So by late afternoon, early evening at Pompeii, things would be starting to fall down. And sadly, they did so with people in those buildings. Remember, it was dark, so people were trying to find any cover they could. And so some of these structures that people were huddled in collapsed. And in fact, we can find evidence of this because there are remains which are, well, they have roof tiles around them, and what we can discern from the injuries to skeletons suggests that these were people who met their end as a result of stuff falling on top of them. The second mechanic was introduced in the early hours of the following morning because that column that had been firing up from Vesuvius started to falter. Its stability was interrupted. So what was going up started to come down, and this came down in the form of pyroclastic flows. So all of that material firing up started rolling down the sides of the volcano. And a pyroclastic flow is essentially an avalanche that moves very quickly, and it's made or composed of hot gas, ash, debris, you name it. Point being, this is lethal. You do not want to be in the way of one of these. And in fact, it's been argued that one of these, the first one in fact, was the one which hit Herculaneum and caused all of those casualties. There were several of these pyroclastic flows, and not all of them had any interaction with Pompeii. 2 did though. One of these was checked by the city's walls. However, the one which followed took out Pompeii. So how exactly does an earthquake factor in with all of this? Well, the team did some incredible work, and it involved a place called the House of the Painters at Work. And this included 2 individuals in a room who were crushed by a collapsing wall. And the skeletal remains conclusively prove that they were both ended, as it were, by that collapsing wall. But the wall didn't collapse due to a structural fail in the sense that there was material building up on the roof. In fact, the roof is being argued as still being intact when this all happened. Not only that, the wall itself, which collapsed upon the 2 men, well, it wasn't a load-bearing wall. So again, we can kind of remove the idea that this was caused by all of that debris accumulating on top of the building. Okay, you might say, what about that pyroclastic flow, the one that hit Pompeii? That must have caused damage. And yeah, it did cause damage. However, the team have done some modelling, done some heavy maths, and worked out that whilst it might have caused damage, it couldn't have caused the damage necessary for the wall to collapse upon the 2 men. So no, that couldn't have been the dynamic either that resulted in those 2 individuals being crushed by the wall. However, when you start considering an earthquake, that makes a lot more sense because it explains how the wall would have sheared off and fallen on the 2 men, and it also explains some of the damage elsewhere on the wall in that room. In short, it becomes much more likely that that was the candidate that caused the collapsing wall. What the team have been able to argue then is that there was an earthquake or earthquakes during the time of Pompeii's destruction. But not only that, they've been able to allocate when this happened within those sequence of events that I mentioned earlier. So you have the fall of pumice and ash, and then you have the pyroclastic flows. And what they've argued is this happened just prior to that pyroclastic flow which hit Pompeii, and that's been thought to have occurred around dawn on the following day. So we're talking, well, just before then. That's possibly when this earthquake took place. One of the great things about Pompeii is that it's a site which is continually being excavated, and we learn more and more each day. So it's plausible that there will be more evidence for earthquakes literally unearthed as more excavation occurs. So if that happens, I'll be sure to let you know.